Well, good evening, everyone that is here, the members and friends of the Arlington branch of the NAACP. What a delight it is to be able to join together tonight to hear updates from our community and to talk and to strategize about where we go forward as freedom fighters. I thank you tonight for your presence, for your commitment, and for the many ways that you serve our community with courage and conviction. We're living in a time when systemic racism continues to show itself in bold and troubling ways, legislatively, socially, and structurally, like never before in our generation. Yet, even in these challenging moments, we stand strong together, knowing that our work is both necessary and sacred. The NAACP was founded on principles deeply rooted in faith and moral conviction. One of our founders, Ida B. Wells, reminds us the way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them. And Congressman John Lewis urged us to keep moving, saying, never be afraid to make some noise and to get in good trouble, necessary trouble. And so tonight we press forward because future generations are depending on us. They're looking at us right now to keep the light shining, to keep justice moving, and to keep truth alive. And so tonight I say to you, thank you. Thank you for standing in this fight and for showing up tonight with strength, with purpose, and hope. Let's join together now in our opening prayer. Holy God, we come before you tonight with grateful hearts, seeking your guidance, wisdom, and strength. Thank you for gathering us as the Arlington branch of the NAACP, for calling us to this work, for uniting us in purpose, and giving us the courage to stand against injustice in all forms. We are living in times when racism and inequity continue to rise boldly, but we know, God, that you have equipped us for such a time as this. Strengthen our resolve, renew our spirits, remind us that justice is your work, and we are honored to be your instruments. As we meet tonight, fill us with clarity, compassion, and conviction. Empower our leaders, protect our volunteers, inspire our community. Let every discussion and every decision made here move us closer to freedom, equality, and true beloved community. We ask your blessings on everyone present tonight and on the generations who will benefit from the seeds we plant today. Guide us, sustain us, and remind us that with you, we are never, ever alone. In your holy name we pray. Amen. Madam Secretary, are we ready tonight for our roll call?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. President Davis.
Present.
First Vice President Tia Alfred.
Present.
Secretary McSweeney, I'm here. Present. Treasurer Karen Nightingale.
Present.
Assistant Treasurer Adriana Spain.
Here.
At-large member Laura Saul Edwards.
Present.
At-large member Whitney Kernoodle. Oh, I believe she said she would be late. At-large member Kellen Macbeth.
Present.
At-large member James Younger.
Present.
Communications Chair Leah Matterall.
Present.
Education Chair Tia Alfred.
Present.
Legal Redress Chair Amy Stitzel.
Present. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Political Action Chair Michael Heminger. And Scholarship Committee Chair Whitney Kernoodle. Again, I believe she said she'd be late.
Present. I'm
Oh.
here now.
Thank you. And Madam President, that concludes the roll call.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, can you also lead us in our minutes for tonight?
Yes. So you should be seeing my screen. We have two sets of minutes. Apologies that I was unable to be here last in October at our October meeting. So we have two sets of minutes to review. The first set is the September 22nd, which I have a draft here. And it's for, sorry, it's the September meeting. And it took place via Zoom, and President Davis called the meeting to order at 7:02. This is the roll call and a list of who was in attendance from the executive committee. At that meeting, we reviewed the minutes from the August meeting, and Ms. Saul Edwards made a motion to accept the minutes. Ms. Spain seconded the motion, and the motion passed with no nays and 1 abstention. We had a motion to suspend the rules since we had a special presentation, actually 2 special presentations. I made a motion to suspend the rules, and Ms. Laura Saul Edwards seconded the motion, and the motion passed unanimously. We had a review of the financial report from Assistant Treasurer Spain, who reviewed the financial report for September, which included all the detail through August 2025. And this was the beginning balance and the ending balance for the operations, for the reserves, and for the scholarship fund. I had made a motion to accept the treasurer's report for August, subject to audit. Ms. Saul Edwards seconded the motion, and the motion passed with no nays and no abstentions. We had a special presentation that had for National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. Our speaker was unable to attend at the last minute due to a family emergency, but we did, President Davis did show a video on suicide prevention and provided additional resources for everyone at the meeting, and also asked for a moment of silent prayer for those who have experienced suicide or thinking of ending their own lives and ways we could be there to support them. We had several committee reports. The Freedom Fund Banquet provided a report with Freedom Fund Banquet co-chair Tia Alfred providing the update. And a lot of it was to talk about parking and the new parking system they had installed. I reported on the gathering we had at the September 18th Black Heritage Museum of Arlington. Dr. Scott Taylor was a wonderful host, and we had a very broad-based discussion. Communications Chair Matterall reported that her team is busy with the Freedom Fund Banquet communications. It is our biggest event of the year, and she provided information about sponsorships and tickets as well. Then we had a special presentation on the exhibition here in Arlington From Barriers to Ballots. President Davis welcomed Jennifer Odlum from the Arlington Public Library, who presented on the project From Barriers to Ballots, the anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. Ms. Odlum thanked President Davis, who actually gave opening remarks at the start of the exhibition, and noted that August 6th marked the 60th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act, which is why they did this exhibition. And she went through actually what the Civil Rights Act entailed, and then presented stories of local activists and change makers who fought for civil rights: Annie E. Harper from Gum Springs, Portia Haskins from Highview Park, Halls Hills, who had successfully sued the Virginia Board of Elections and Arlington County. And then also several other people, John Robinson, who was a Green Valley resident and organizer, and Gertrude Lind Crocker, a suffragist and silent sentinel. She thanked the exhibition partners, which included the Charlie Clark Center for Local History, the Arlington Historical Society, the Black Heritage Museum of Arlington, the League of Women Voters of Arlington, typo, I will change that, Voters of Arlington, and the NAACP Arlington branch, and funding was provided by Friends of the Library. President Davis closed by thanking Ms. Odlum and thanked her for the partnership between the organizations and everyone for their mission to the work we do. And the meeting was adjourned. She closed with a closing prayer, and the meeting was adjourned at 7:44 p.m. And those are the minutes for September.
Thank you so very much. We've heard the minutes. What is our pleasure tonight?
I'd like to move that we accept the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
Right, that was Brenda Cox. It's been
Yes.
moved. Thank you. Properly moved and second. Are we ready for the question? All those who are in favor, be it known by saying aye or raising your virtual hand at the bottom of the.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those who are opposed have the same right tonight. The ayes have it. Thank you. Madam Secretary, can we now have the minutes for the October meeting?
Yes, I've just switched over. Hopefully you saw
Yes.
Hopefully you saw that move. Okay. These are the general membership meeting minutes for October 27th. This is the draft. There was a call to order at 7:02 p.m. by President Davis, who began with an opening prayer, and she thanked the membership for making our Freedom Fund banquet such a success, and reminded us that the fight for freedom and equity and equality continues. President Davis asked for a motion to suspend the rules to conduct our special presentation, which was education on ranked choice voting. Ms. Saul Edwards made the motion to suspend the rules, and Ms. Madrill seconded the motion, and the motion passed unanimously. President Davis presented the agenda for the meeting, and because I wasn't there, I have now filled in the attendance for that meeting. If any of it is incorrect, please let me know. I'll hold there for just a second so people can see it. We did not review the minutes for September meeting, for the September meeting. We did have a review of the October 2025 financial report. Treasurer Karen Nightingale presented the report, which details the financial activity through September 2025. And the balances of the 3 branch accounts were as follows. And President Davis did note a correction to one of the detailed expense lines, which Ms. Nightingale had gone over, which read National Convention and should have read State Convention. The treasurer made the correction, and there were no other questions or corrections regarding the financial report. Ms. Saul Edwards made a motion to accept the treasurer's October financial report with the noted change and subject to audit, and Ms. Spain seconded the motion, and the motion passed. There were committee updates on the Freedom Fund banquet. Chair Nightingale did report that we had a great turnout. We sold out early, had an inspiring keynote speaker, and recognized a lot of wonderful people in our community who do great work. And we also met our financial obligations as having paid most of the bills, and we turned a modest profit from the banquet. And President Davis thanked the co-chairs, Nightingale and Alfred, and the entire committee for their work. The Housing Committee reported on fair housing. They have coordinated with advocates to testify at the August and September and also October county board meetings regarding the high rates of housing discrimination that were uncovered during the fair housing testing that was conducted by the county. And there was also going to be a speaker at the November board meeting. The NAACP had sent letters in December 2024 and September 2025, and this was a follow-up to those letters. The committee had also been working with the Metropolitan Washington COG Regional Fair Housing Plan Advisory Committee, calling for detailed and substantive updates that show a commitment to addressing the fair and affordable housing needs. And the branch has, we have adopted housing legislative priorities for the 2026 General Assembly session, and are working with Delegate Adele McClure to introduce a budget amendment to establish a competitive grant program to address local disparities and access to opportunity among neighborhoods. There was also a discussion of anti-gouging and rent stabilization. The Housing Committee was working with the statewide coalition to advocate for localities to have authority to adopt anti-gouging and rent stabilization that would cap annual rent increases. And the committee is asking the NAACP is asking the county board to adopt this as one of their legislative priorities. And we also are looking for a housing chair. It was announced to lead the fight for housing justice in Arlington. The scholarship committee had provided a very detailed update on their work during the Freedom Fund banquet, and we're able to send that around. If you're interested, please reach out. The NAACP Virginia State Convention took place on October 24th through 26th, and our branch was represented at the Virginia State Convention by the Honorable J.D. Spain, member Judith Knight, and me. The convention was held in Richmond, and President Davis did indicate that since we had just returned from the conference, we will schedule time at a future meeting to present an update. And then there was the special presentation, which was the education session on ranked choice voting. President Davis welcomed the presenters from Challenging Racism who provided the education on ranked choice voting. led by Dawn Kaiser. Also joining her was Judith Knight and Kristen Moody. And she brought greetings from CR Director Mo Bryant and from the Executive Director of Ranked Choice Virginia, Sally Hudson. Dawn then provided a very detailed history of ranked choice voting and also went through and explained how ranked choice voting worked using the most recent Arlington primary for county board and talked about how it had been shown, ranked choice voting had been shown to positively influence the discourse during campaigns. And following the explanation and videos describing how it worked, the challenging racism presenters took questions from the group. In closing, President Davis expressed thanks to the presenters for the ranked choice voting education provided that evening and encouraged everyone to vote in the upcoming election. The meeting was adjourned at 7:50 p.m. And those are the minutes from October's meeting.
All right. Thank you so very much. We have heard the minutes tonight. What is our pleasure?
I motion to approve.
I second.
We're properly moved and second. Are we ready for the question? All those who are in favor, be it known by saying aye or raising your virtual hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Those who are opposed have the same right. The ayes have it. Thank you so very much, Madam Secretary, for the detailed minutes tonight. So even if we're not here, we can still feel like we've been a part of the meeting. At this point, we do need to move forward in terms of our agenda. However, there is a specific agenda that we usually follow in the NAACP, and whenever we have a special presentation, such as what has been scheduled for this evening, we need a motion to suspend the rules. And so I open that to you now. Is there a motion?
I
President,
move that we suspend the rules. This is Leah Matterall.
Seconded, Whitney.
Properly moved and second. Are we ready for the question? All those who are in favor, be it known by saying aye or raising your virtual hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Those who are opposed have the same right. The ayes have it. Thank you so very much. Before we open up for our presentation this evening, we are going to hear from our committee chairs. They're going to give brief summaries of the work that is being done, as well as dates that are upcoming. As your president, I do want to ask that you would schedule a time to be able to be with all of the executive committee on December the 15th at 7 p.m. We are going to be together in person for a holiday fellowship, and we're going to celebrate all of the holidays from all of our traditions that evening. And so we invite you to come out from 7 to 9 on December the 15th. You will get more information about it, but I'd love to see your faces here in the Zoom box, but it's going to be even better when we are in the same room, the same space together. All right, I'm going to ask that our committee chairs now give us quick updates on the work that is being done. And so we'll start tonight with me. I'm going to share for religious affairs first. For religious affairs, we were honored to serve as a part of the Virginia State Conference prayer for Election Day, starting off the day at 6 a.m. With faith leaders, interfaith prayer with faith leaders from across the state. And from there, we carried prayer to 4 different polling locations in our jurisdiction and made sure that the faith communities all had information leading up to the election, as well as we provided 319 rides to the polls this year. So very proud of that work and very pleased that many of our people in Arlington, even people who haven't been voting in recent years, made it to the polls. And we have to continue to push that as we go forward because we know a vote is a form of prayer. I believe that strongly. All right, so we are going to hear tonight as well a scholarship committee, Whitney Kernoodle. Whitney, if you're
Okay.
talking, you're on mute.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. So at our last meeting, the scholarship committee focused on two main areas, which were fundraising and program structure. We set a goal of raising $50,000 this year at the banquet, with ideas ranging from reconnecting with Amazon, reaching out to local Arlington donors, and also exploring other companies like Nestle and Boeing, and then tying scholarship giving to branch membership drives. We also discussed, and we're now planning to host a community fundraising event like line dancing or karaoke, and following up on the donations that were made during the Freedom Fund banquet. We also confirmed, President Davis also confirmed at least $1,500 designated for a scholarship for Miss Rosa. So for our scholarship structure, we have already agreed that for the 2026 cycle, we're going to offer at least one Britain scholarship, 5 one-time $1,000 branch awards, and depending on funding, a local leaders scholarship as well. We are in the midst of exploring partnerships with the Arlington Community Foundation, as well as the Zeta National Educational Foundation, which is a Black sorority, to help administer the larger awards in the future. So due to extensive travel of several members of the committee, we've yet to meet again, but we do plan to meet twice between now and the beginning of the year in order to drop the application at the same time as last year, which was between February 1st and 15th, 2026 this year. And then most action items, including the donor outreach, the drafting letters, confirming the totals, and updating the scholarship application, those are in the process of being completed now.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, as well as the Scholarship Committee. Legal redress, Amy says.
Hi, good evening. We're looking forward to hosting with Arlington for Justice part 2 of the community conversation we started last year about how to prevent arrest for poverty crimes, getting help, not handcuffs. Please join us Wednesday, December 10th at 5:30 at Lover Run Community Center.
Thank you so very much. Education, Tia Alfred.
Hello, everyone. The most important things that we've covered this time around is that our branch is going to further discuss sending out a letter regarding the CIP that was in place for the Career Center and the Montessori school situation, where they would then move into the legacy building after the new building is up. There's currently 4 out of 5 school board members who now want to revisit it, though it was in the plans and voted on and budgeted for 2 years ago. And also, there was an issue last week at one of the local high schools where the word nigger was carved into the ground and nothing was initially said and it was not acknowledged. And finally, after a call in to people, it was addressed by the superintendent and the school board chair, but not mentioned by name and not called out of what actually happened. So we will also further discuss maybe addressing that with APS. And other than that, we can share later with the rest. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and the Education Committee, Membership Committee.
Sorry, that's me. For membership, we are looking at, certainly seeing everybody on December 15th at our in-person event, and for the entire branch. And we will be looking at creating more membership opportunities, in-person opportunities. I received a lot of feedback about the Black Heritage Museum membership social that we had. We had a series of socials, but that one was by far one of the best attended, and the conversation was really robust. And in fact, I saw Dr. Scott Taylor recently. Actually, every time I see him, he says to me, when is the NAACP coming back to do another social and have another conversation? So he would like to for us to schedule some community conversations. So I'll be working with the president to do that. And that's pretty much what I have.
Thank you. We are still looking for a chair for our housing committee. So if there's anyone that's interested, please be in touch with us. But we will have a report tonight from one of the members of the committee, Kelly Macbeth.
Thank you. So for the Housing Committee, the NAACP spoke during public comment at the November County Board meeting and will speak again at the December County Board meeting about the high rates of housing discrimination uncovered during testing in 2024 and 2025, as well as the NAACP's recommended policy solutions in our September 2025 and December 2024 letters. We want to say thank you to everyone who contacted the County Board in support of anti-rent gouging legislation in the General Assembly to halt the drastic increase in rents. The County Board voted on Saturday to include anti-rent gouging as a part of their 2026 legislative priority package. The last week as well, the NAACP joined a coalition of over 60 organizations across Virginia to urge the Virginia congressional delegation to protect homelessness funds that the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development is planning to cut, which could put thousands of low-income residents out of their homes and leave homeless residents without support. And we are also starting to plan for our 2026 Fair Housing Conference. This will be, I think, our 5th year hosting the conference. And as President Davis said, we are looking for someone to chair our housing committee and continue fighting for housing justice in Arlington. So please let us know if you're interested. Thank you.
Thank you, and for the work that the Housing Committee continues to do for us all. Freedom Fund Banquet Chair.
Yes. Again, we had a successful banquet. Currently, we are financially free. We've paid all our debts and obligations to the banquet. The banquet was a true success financially, as well as the community was really blessed by all things that were done there. So again, we thank everyone who participated. We thank everyone who donated. We thank everyone who came out, and just be ready because we're going to do it again next year. Thank you.
All right, and Communications Chair.
Just continuing to promote the work of the branch. And to that end, Madam Secretary, I can't post anything in the chat, so I do have links for people to register and learn about the upcoming events, and I message them to you directly in case you want to share them. And I do want to announce that we have transitioned from our old YouTube channel and brought all the older videos from that channel to our new channel, which you can find at YouTube at NAACP Arlington VA for Virginia. So you can find us there and subscribe and follow us there. Thank you.
Thank you, and for the work that the Communications Committee does as well. We are grateful tonight for everyone that is present. We do acknowledge our leaders, our elected leaders, as well as our faith leaders that are here. And thank you for your presence tonight as well. I'll now turn it over to Amy Stitzel, who will facilitate the second part of our meeting tonight.
Thank you, President Davis. Thank you all for joining. Tonight, we are focusing on community involvement in our county's law enforcement. We're excited to hear about an update from the Law Enforcement Community Oversight Board and an introduction from the Community Advisory Group to the Arlington Sheriff's Office tonight. Let's turn first to the Law Enforcement Community Oversight Board. Arlington's Community Oversight Board and Independent Policing Auditor were created by County Code Chapter 69 in July 2021. The COB is tasked with independently reviewing and addressing public grievances against the Arlington County Police Department and has the power to investigate these complaints and recommend actions. I have the pleasure of introducing Mummy Ibrahim, who will give us an update on the COB tonight. Ms. Ibrahim joined Arlington County as the Independent Policing Auditor, the IPA, in 2022 and has been integral in readying the COB to fulfill its mission and investigating community complaints against the police. Previously, she served as a senior staff attorney at the Advancement Project, where her work also focused on policing issues. Ms. Ibrahim has experience as a contract attorney for the New Orleans Independent Police Monitor, overseeing disciplinary hearings, data collection, and policy reform within the New Orleans Police Department. As a native of Sudan, Ms. Ibrahim received her bachelor's degree from Hampton University and her JD from Howard University School of Law. Thank you, Mommy, for being here tonight. Let me start first. Yes. Asking you, we know you spoke to our membership as when you were newer to the IPA and gave us an introduction to the IPA's role and the COB's role. Can you give us kind of an update of what has been going on in the last year?
Sure. Excuse me. Just as a little bit of a recap, and also kind of related to the introduction you just shared. The model that we have for civilian oversight in Arlington is what we call a hybrid model. So it's both an investigatory agency as well as a review agency. And there's two parts to it. One is my office as the independent policing auditor, and then you have the community oversight board, which is, so we both offices comprise, or both entities, I guess, if you will, comprise our civilian oversight agency as a whole. The reason why I'm making that distinction is because my office has the investigatory role or the investigatory power, but we kind of act as an agent, if you will, for the community oversight board. So I investigate the complaints that are received from the public related to any sort of misconduct allegations. I also do kind of systemic evaluations and policy and training recommendations. And then I give my investigation over to the Community Oversight Board, which then they review it, and then they will present them at the public meeting and produce a report. Another reason why I make that distinction is because as we go through this discussion, I want to highlight some of the work that we've done over the past 2 years, and just make some distinctions in terms of recommendations related to policies, trainings, different things like that. Once I complete my investigation, I do a report. In that written report, I provide my findings in an investigation, as well as any sort of policy, training, or just systemic recommendations, right? Those are made in writing, and they are shared with ACPD and the Community Oversight Board. My report, unfortunately, because of the county ordinance or how the county ordinance is written, is not public. I have hopes that at some point they will become public, or that they could become public, but just the way that the ordinance is currently written it is not public. And so the reports that you will see on our website are produced from the COB specifically. So I'm also making that distinction because as I talk about recommendations, any sort of policy or training recommendations, I'm going to be speaking on behalf of the recommendations that I've made in writing to ACPD through my reports. The COB has published, I believe, 3 reports to date. So those are recommendations that I will say have been made from the COB. Any sort of discussions that we've had around investigations during public meetings, I will call discussions and not recommendations, because they haven't been reduced to an actual written report yet. So I'm just making that distinction in fairness to what's available for you all to see, and also in fairness to the police department, who hasn't, after the COB completes a report, they will have 30 days to respond to that report and respond to any sort of recommendations that the COB made. And so I wouldn't call them recommendations on behalf of the COB until they've formally, synthesized their discussions that they had into what exact recommendations they want to make. And then the police departments had an opportunity to respond to those, so that you can see kind of both sides of that discussion. But once that happens, I publish both the COB report and ACPD's response, if they have one, onto our website. And I'll show you all where those reports are published so that you can see them for yourselves. But I am able to say, what my recommendations were, because again, they have been provided in writing and I've already synthesized those down. But because I'm speaking kind of on behalf of both the COB and myself, sometimes you'll hear me make some distinctions, because while we are one entity, I do fully support and recommend that they also have their ability to speak independently about what their recommendations are. Typically, they mirror mine. They will be the same. We don't usually have different vantage points or significantly different vantage points. Sometimes we may differ just slightly on findings and that sort of thing, but I think it's important that they have the ability to discuss exactly what their recommendations are. So I don't want to put words in their mouths, but I can kind of summarize what some of the discussions have been. And if some of you have joined us during our public meetings, you will have heard those discussions. And if you haven't, they are also available on the website for you to hear as well. But I can certainly kind of highlight some of the what I think have been some of the profound discussions and recommendations that I've made and discussions that we've had with the COB, and I think just areas that we've had the most impact as an agency overall.
Thank you, Mommy, and thanks for clarifying the distinction. And I think a lot of us probably haven't been able to attend and watch the COB public meetings. I know there have been a lot of interesting discussions. I guess you mentioned that there are 3 reports that the COB published, and you could show us where those are. I know people
Sure.
would be interested in seeing them. And if you could talk a little bit about recommendations made in those reports or your recommendations specifically.
Sure. So I'm gonna, the chat is actually disabled, and I don't know if I have
Okay.
screen sharing ability. So let me see.
Sorry, Ms. McSweeney, I didn't really
It's
give her a
okay.
heads up if
Yeah,
she can.
it's okay. We're on the fly here, and
Okay.
either the chat or the screen sharing, I can put it in the chat, a link for folks. Perfect.
Just made you co-host.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so this is the website, and then I think, yes, I can share my screen as well. So this is our public website. It's accessible through the Arlington County government website as well. This is how the landing page looks. This top orange button, just as a plug, will send you over to our independent intake system for you to submit a complaint, commendation, recommendation, anything of that nature. But what we want to focus on here is this tab right here, publications. So you'll hit this plus button, and then as you scroll down, you will see COB investigative reports. And so they're listed in order of the earliest one that was published up until the latest one that was published. CMP numbers are just what we use internally to denote an investigation. All of our reports are anonymized, so they won't have like a name associated with them or anything like that, but just a CMP number. And then when you open up the report, I'll open up the last one, for example, you'll see here just a cover page, and then these are the reports that are published by the COB. They'll have a summary of the findings. OPR is our Internal Affairs Office of Professional Responsibility. You'll see my findings in the center column and then the COB findings on the last one. It'll have a summary of the complaint. And then you'll see a metric here, which is kind of an evaluation of the internal investigation and how thorough, objective, complete, fair they believe it was. And then you'll scroll down and you'll see an explanation of the findings related to each allegation. And if you click the link, it'll take you actually to a publicly available police department directive manual where you can see exactly what the policy says. You'll see also, this one was a kind of shorter investigation, but sometimes it can be lengthier. Here on the bottom, you'll see some additional information related to policy or training recommendations. Just as an aside, we also just hired some temporary support for the Community Oversight Board. So they've done at least, I think, 12, maybe closer to 15 now investigations. They've only published 3 reports. Obviously, they are, they are fully volunteers, so they also have full professional and personal lives. And so it's been a little bit of a task, and we kind of went into overdrive mode in the beginning. They were doing like 2 investigations a month instead of 1. So we have a couple of reports that they are working on through their temporary support staff now. So you'll see a lot more being published on the website in the near future. And then I'll take you back also to where you can see the meeting information. So right up here, meetings, you'll click COB meetings. And then this is where you would go to see, when the next meeting is or previous meetings, and you'll see the agenda. Typically, you'll have a link there to join the meeting. And then once the meeting is concluded, we'll post the recorded meeting here, and it's hosted on YouTube. So you just click that link and it'll take you to the YouTube channel where the recorded meeting would be. So that's how you can catch up there. And then, of course, if you want to get involved as a COB member, either voting or non-voting, you can apply right here in the top corner. Any questions about the website before I stop sharing my screen?
If people have questions, they can put them in the chat.
Perfect. Okay.
But I know that that was one of the questions, how to stay
Awesome.
involved and follow the COB.
Great. So related to, I'm sorry, were you
I
gonna?
think you're going there.
Okay, yeah. Related to the investigations that the COB has done, the 3 that are published on there were our first 3 investigations that they did. One was related to a complaint involving a member, we've had a couple at this point, former military, someone who had a negative interaction with a police officer who was responding to a call for service related to a dog fight. We made some recommendations there related to just PTSD sensitivity related to people who are former military, as well as managing police response to events to prevent over-policing. In that situation, for example, there were a number of police vehicles that reported to the call for service. Eventually, some of them started to leave the scene, but we just had some discussions there around how we could perhaps manage scenes better, both for resources purposes, but also because we know that sometimes when people are maybe suffering from underlying PTSD or are just having a negative experience with police, that sometimes more police officers showing up to a scene that may not necessarily warrant it can amplify the situation and cause higher stress levels. Those were the specific ones that were made in that investigation, as well as the both of them came out of that first report. The other 2 were, one was related to an individual who was pulled over multiple times because of a expired registration, and there was a bias-free policing allegation related to that. We did not sustain the bias-free policing allegation in that one, and did not make any formal recommendations related to policing practices, but there were some discussions from the COB just related to traffic enforcement and how, like, if someone keeps getting repeatedly pulled over for expired registration and you're just piling ticket on top of ticket on top of ticket, that creates, just kind of an economic injustice, and it's not necessarily the most equitable way to deal with situations like that. But obviously that's related to larger criminal justice issues and not necessarily specifically ACPD. And then the last one that they reviewed was one related to professionalism, where an officer used some negative terms and some unprofessional, like, curse words kind of under his breath as he was giving someone or walking away from a vehicle as he was getting ready to write someone a ticket. It wasn't actually heard by the individual until they requested a copy of the body-worn camera footage for purposes of just filing a complaint or just seeing kind of what the interaction was, because he just overall wasn't pleased with the interaction that he had when he reviewed the body-worn camera footage that he got as a response to a FOIA request he made. He heard the officer making those comments under his breath. And so, to ACPD's credit, even though it wasn't necessarily originally heard in the complainant's earshot, it was obviously heard on body-worn camera footage, and they treated it as such. So it was still treated just as though he would have said it to the person's face, and that allegation was sustained. We didn't make any recommendations in that specific investigation, but rather commended the because it's kind of a novel issue, right, with body-worn cameras and what happens when you're walking away, and if it's captured on body-worn camera, do we still hold them accountable? Our position was, obviously taxpayer dollars are paying for body-worn camera, and as long as you're on body-worn camera, you are still considered being in the public, and so we recommended that should be treated as such. Just some other quick ones that I personally want to hit on that have been recommendations that I've made in writing, but have also been amplified by the COB in discussions that I think are really big ones. And these I'm confident will become part of reports as well. But just to make that distinction for the time being, we had a case where a woman was pulled over with some kids in the car, and they were trying to investigate some issues with her license plate being potentially fraudulent. She, along with, there was four kids, I believe 3 out of 4 of them. They were all under the age of 18, but one was 12. So the 12-year-old was kept in the car. The others were all handcuffed and kept on the side of the road for almost 45 minutes while they investigated this whole license plate thing. In That was one of the cases that we really had some intense conversations about. But the recommendation that was made was to create some different methods of detainment when we're talking about kids, right? Like it's discretionary whether you want to order someone out of the car and detain them in handcuffs or not in handcuffs. And so we recommended just creating some different procedures. Obviously, one of the officers did use their discretion in keeping the 12-year-old in the vehicle. Our position was that, or my position specifically was that that same level of discretion or some sort of a separate protocol could have been utilized for the other kids who were under 18. Just overall talking about bias-free policing and the treatment of that and the investigation of that is a recommendation that I've made multiple times in investigations, and just expanding our palette around how we investigate bias-free policing claims, and also separating out some of the biases that are kind of implicit and treating those a little bit differently, and educating around those instead of just being focused on the punishment aspect of it, because I know that sounds counterintuitive, but when departments are focused, not just specifically ACPD, but any department is just focused on like the discipline aspect of it, it can cause the underlying issue to be one that people kind of hesitate to call it what it could be, because it's kind of like a scarlet letter of like, oh, you are now a racist or biased officer, and so we have to fire you. And I think what we've explored through our conversations and recommendations is that there are obviously different levels of biases. We all have biases, right? Just because you have a bias or you're expressing an implicit bias, first of all, you may not even be aware of it, but also it doesn't necessarily mean that you are a bigoted racist either. There's levels. Obviously, if we're talking about a bigoted racist, I will be the first one to say they can go. But if we're talking about things that we can unlearn or things that we are not conscious of and different things like that, I think there are spaces for us to treat those situations differently, and different levels of discipline that could be associated with that. That would help us, I think, treat situations accordingly, but also to be more willing to explore the levels of bias or like the causes of the bias in a way that doesn't just look like, did you use bias when you were doing X, Y, and Z? And then, inevitably the answer is going to be a yes or a no, and usually a no. So just asking different types of questions and really investigating those more. And then the last big one that I will say is we realized during an investigation that the police department was not collecting any data around how often they were pointing firearms at people, which we found to be alarming. Not because we think that they're doing it at an alarming rate, but just that we don't know if we don't have data, right? Like there's no diagnostic if we don't have data. So as an auditor, you cannot tell me that you don't have a problem around something if you don't have data to support that one way or another. Because a lot of what I do here is diagnostic. Like I need to know what the information is, what the situation is in order to determine whether or not this is an area where we should prioritize making some changes. And so in that particular situation, we did feel that it was an unwarranted use of force because the underlying allegation was a stolen energy drink. And so in that situation, we did sustain a violation of the use of force policy. But the bigger issue is that there was no collection of data around that. And so it didn't trigger a use of force review. It didn't trigger a supervisor to go like look at footage and determine whether or not the pointing of a firearm was warranted in that situation. So that's something that we pointed out and is now a part of a use of force form. Like you have to click a button when you're filling out your use of force or your incident report to say whether or not that happened. And so now we're working through like collection of data. Also, I will say that the police department is now, I don't know if it's formally launched or not, but I know that the technology was adopted and has been procured. But when an officer unholsters his gun and takes it out of the holster, it now automatically triggers the body-worn camera to turn on. So that in and of itself does not only trigger additional review, but it also helps to track data around how many times firearms are being unholstered. So I think technologically and policy-wise, we're making some advancements there. But I'm just to be clear, I'm not making a statement at this point about whether or not that's a systemic issue. We found that it was an issue in that particular case, but I have to have the data in order to say whether it is or is not a systemic issue. So I'm also not saying that it isn't. I just have to see the data to say one way or another what it is. So that was the issue that we pointed out there. I'll stop there because I know I've rambled for quite a bit, but I think those are like the three areas where I would say we've made the most impact in terms of just serious recommendations.
Yeah, it's nice to see these nuanced conversations that are having, and it shows like the community input, right, on our police department, which is something new for Arlington County. And I really do appreciate all of the volunteer work that the Community Oversight Board does. One more question, I think, from me. You had talked about that stop with the kids, and I think at that meeting it was discussed that there was some difficulty having access to records of kids. And then I know also in March of last year, the Community Oversight Board identified an opportunity to improve the COB's ability to fulfill its mission by having unfettered access to the police records. So if you could tell us about if that's still an issue, does the COB and IPA now have unfettered access to police records? Are they able to investigate what they need to with cases involving kids? And if not, how can we support that to happen?
I appreciate that question. The short answer is no. It is also a nuanced answer, but I'll start with the access to juvenile records first, because that's a little bit more clear. And so our ordinance specifically excludes juvenile records from our access, and that includes myself. In that specific case, the kids were part of the underlying criminal investigation because of the fact they were in the car, but they weren't the subjects of the investigation. And so our argument, and then there was no charges that were ever filed. So we argued that it was not a juvenile record, and that they could easily blur out the kids' faces because our whole issue was just that they were taken out of the car and put in handcuffs, not necessarily who they were, what they were saying, and what they were doing, because they didn't really have much input on the underlying investigation. So I draw that out to say one issue is like, what is a juvenile record? Is that considered one or not? Because if you look at the Arlington County Code section, I think it's, the Virginia Code section 16.1-301, confidentiality of juvenile law enforcement records. It was our position that it contemplates like a criminal juvenile record, and that was the intent was to protect, criminal records related to kids from, being available to the public. We went back and forth with and it's really the county attorney that makes these calls at the end of the day as far as like records release, and not necessarily only the police department. So we did have like a larger discussion, but the position that they took was it's usually always going to be in favor of like trying to manage risk as much as possible, right? And so they didn't want to risk potentially violating the Virginia Code section, as well as our ordinance, which explicitly says that we do not have access to juvenile records. So this was one that we went kind of back and forth about for a while, and we tried to offer solutions such as blurring out their faces, muting their voices, things like that, so we could still get access to the body-worn camera footage. But that was that middle ground still didn't work. It was the county's position that the way that the underlying Virginia code as well as our ordinance are written just explicitly precludes it. And so it would basically take a change in the Virginia code, which is something that we've actually asked for in the legislative package for the upcoming legislative session. Excuse me. And also then we'd have to change the ordinance so that we have access to those records. I just think that I hope I can speak for the community in saying that like it is not kids are not in any way protected from police encounters, unfortunately. Like they have police encounters in the same way that adults do. And I don't think that it was the intent of the community to exclude kids from being a part of this kind of review system if they are having a negative experience with law enforcement. And so I don't think that that came about as a result of the community's like desire or a reflection of the community's desire. I think it was specifically because of the restrictions in the underlying Virginia code. There's like very specific entities that can have access to juvenile records. So to sum that up, the legislative recommendation that we've made is to include civilian oversight agencies in those list of entities that can have access to these records. And then moving forward, the intent would be that we would have access to any records related to juveniles. The unfettered access issue is a little bit of a longer one, and I don't want to go on
Maybe
about
briefly.
it, but we don't, what I consider our full access, which is what the ordinance requires, to me is unfettered access, so unredacted, the ability to go into what the police department uses to host their body-worn camera footage, which is Axon, or their intake or their case management system, which is IA Pro. As an auditor, I should be able to go into those systems and look at anything I need to look at. That's what the standard is in civilian oversight. Not saying that all civilian oversight agencies have that, but for example, I had that in New Orleans. So that is what I consider to be unfettered access. In order to get that, though, you would need what we call Criminal Justice Information System certification, CJIS certification. And there are some legislative hurdles, to put it shortly, that do not include explicitly civilian oversight agencies in the definition of agencies that can have CJIS certification. So as a part of the legislative package, I believe we are going to be moving to create a work group that can help unpack what kind of state and federal legislative changes need to be made in order to include civilian oversight agencies so that we can get CJIS certification and get unfettered access. But this is an area that's going to affect multiple agencies and is just part of a larger discussion. But basically, the law hasn't quite caught up with civilian oversight in Virginia as a whole. And so we're all running into these kind of obstacles of just trying to create space for certain levels of access that typically civilian oversight agencies or members of the public did not otherwise have. So that's part of a larger conversation, and that's like the most succinct way I can summarize that.
Okay, thank you for that. I am going to ask people to put questions in the chat instead of coming off mute. That's what's been requested. I guess when is the next meeting, the COB meeting? I think the website you showed had October 22nd as the last
So
meeting.
sorry to interrupt, but the chat is disabled, so we won't be able to enter questions in the
Oh,
chat.
okay. How about a couple brief questions? Tell us when the next meeting is for the Community Oversight Board.
Excuse me. They're typically on the fourth Wednesday of the month. They were supposed to have one this Wednesday coming up, but we actually have a records access issue with that investigation as well. It involves a victim of a sexual assault. And so there are some confidentiality issues with that as well, which is another part of our legislative package. But we're sorting through that and we've created a consent form to reach out to the complainant. So we're just waiting for them to respond. Once we get access to those records, we'll review that investigation. So we're supposed to do it this Wednesday, but we still haven't gotten the access that we need. So we're going to hopefully review that investigation in December. And the regular meeting date would be I hesitate to actually give the date because sometimes the
Okay.
students meet on other dates, like not the fourth Wednesday if there's like scheduling conflicts. But the fourth Wednesday of December would technically be December 24th, which is Christmas Eve. So I'm gonna probably guess that it's gonna be a different date. But as soon as we know what the date is, if you are not already registered for our alerts, you can do so on our website, and then I will send out an alert letting people know what day the meeting is and how to join the meeting as well.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see anything in the chat. I don't know if it is able to work now, but if one or two people want to come off and ask some quick questions, and then we'll move to the community advisory group to the sheriff's
The
office.
chat is open.
Okay, it looks like Hannah has your hand up. Hannah, are you able to put it in the chat?
It's still marked as disabled.
Okay, go ahead, ask your question really quick.
So sorry.
Thanks.
Given that juveniles are not subject to the Civilian Oversight Board, what's the existing oversight mechanism? I assume it's internal, but what's the existing oversight mechanism for juvenile cases?
That's a great question. And yes, it would be that investigation would be solely conducted by the Office of Professional Responsibility. I will say that I have developed enough of a rapport with the Office of Professional Responsibility, which is our internal affairs at this point, that even if they don't give me access to the underlying records, or like we don't have the, I'll say, authority to investigate it, I will still get a report out. So I'll still know that it came in. I'll know, generally what happened, and I'll be able to provide some kind of more informal feedback, even if it doesn't, go through the regular process. And so it's not completely removed from civilian oversight in that regard, in that I'll still have some level of input, but we don't have the jurisdiction to review it or make findings or anything of that nature. So it would just go through the regular internal affairs process.
Okay, thank you. Looking forward to hearing more, and I hope everyone can watch or at least follow through the website. I do want to take a minute to remember the work of Kent Carter. Kent Carter was in the police practices group, helping to make recommendations for the Community Oversight Board, the ordinance. He was the NAACP vice president when he was killed tragically in October of 2022. So we remember his wonderful work and take a moment to think of his memory. Thank you, Ms. Ibrahim. I'm looking forward to talking again soon. Now I'm going to turn to the Community Advisory Group to the Sheriff's Office. The Community Advisory Group was formed in 2023 by a group of Arlington volunteers, including the NAACP Arlington Branch's Criminal Justice Committee and Sheriff Jose Quiroz, to increase transparency to the community and to offer community suggestions and critiques to the Sheriff's Office. We have two Community Advisory Group members joining us tonight. First, Peter Raven Hansen. Professor Raven Hansen has resided in Arlington for more than 50 years and is a Silver Life member of the NAACP and former member of the NAACP Arlington's Criminal Justice Committee. Second, Chuck Hayden. Chuck Hayden and his wife have lived in Arlington for 48 years. He's been Arlington Public Schools Advisory Committee member, a youth sports coach, and a member of multiple Arlington Parks and Recs boards and committee. He's the current chair of the Sheriff's Community Advisory Group. And before retiring, he was a lawyer practicing in the federal government and private practice. So please give us, welcome Peter and Chuck. Please give us an update, an introduction, I guess, to the Community Advisory Group. Not many of our members are familiar with this group and would love to hear what's been going on and some background about how it was formed and who the members are.
I'd be happy to do that and start, and thanks for having us here this evening. I'll talk very briefly about how it was formed and why it was formed, and then Chuck will discuss the members and the meetings we've had to date. It's helpful that you heard from the independent police auditor about the Community Oversight Board for the police department, because that's where this story begins. In 2021, the county board finally exercised the authority that state law gave it to create a community oversight board. And that's what you've just had explained to you or updated on for the last 10, 15 minutes very helpfully. But that oversight board, though it's called the Law Enforcement Community Oversight Board, does not oversee or have anything to do with the sheriff's office. It's limited to the police department. And the reason is that the sheriff is an independent constitutional officer under the law of the Commonwealth. We elect the sheriff directly. The county board does not appoint the sheriff. And so neither the Virginia law nor any ordinance creates an oversight board or any community organization for dealing with the sheriff's office. That's a problem. The Criminal Justice Committee of this chapter thought that that left a serious gap in community involvement in criminal justice in Arlington County. And the reason for that is that the sheriff runs the Arlington County Detention Facility, our jail, which has 325 detainees on a daily basis, but over 5,000 commitments over the course of the year. And of those, more than half are assessed to have mental health issues, and more than a third have addiction issues, and a very large number are homeless. I think Amy referred to poverty crimes. I would call them criminal charges based on being at the wrong place at the wrong time. They happen a lot if you don't have any other place to go. And so what that makes the Arlington Jail is the default largest mental health institution in Arlington County, and by default, the largest drug addiction treatment facility in Arlington County, and by default, arguably the largest homeless shelter. And to not have community involvement in a multifunction criminal justice institution of that importance is a bad mistake. And so the Criminal Justice Committee decided, though we lacked any kind of legal authority to create such an entity, during the November election in 2023 for sheriff, we'd approach the candidates and see if we could talk them into voluntarily setting up an organization like this. And we met with Jose Quiroz in October 2023. Criminal Justice Committee, I think, had a Zoom meeting with him. And he said he was amenable to the idea. And when he was then elected in November, we followed up with a concept memo and proposed bylaws and a list of proposed members. And he was true to his word and agreed to an organizational meeting in February of 2024. And then afterwards, we stood up a committee with mainly community members who our chairman, Chuck, will describe to you in a moment. So that basically is how we started. And the question is, why did we start? And I guess more specifically, what was the concept that animated our concept memo? And the answer is transparency. We wanted mainly the Arlington County Jail, but the sheriff's office operation generally to be transparent to the public in two ways. First of all, the way that President Davis mentioned we wanted to shine a light on what was going on in the operation of the jail so that we could make informed recommendations and criticisms, speak in a knowing way about how it could be improved if there was room for improvement. And since there had not been any regular community involvement, as far as we know, in the operation of the detention facility before, this seemed like a step forward. And secondly, we wanted a transparency in another way. We wanted to tell the community about what the sheriff's office was doing in the jail, both good and bad, because we found that there are a lot of people that confuse jails and prisons and don't really know what's going on in the county. And a good example of that, it just came up this past week, because many of you may have seen an article in Arl Now about the pay increase for the police. The starting salary for the police has now been set at a more generous level. We applaud that because we need good policemen, and the cost of housing in the county, as we all know, is astronomical, and we have to, have an incentive for hiring good policemen. But what was less known was that left a $23,000 gap between the starting salary for police and the starting salary for deputy sheriffs. That is crippling to recruitment at the sheriff's office and to the management of the jail. It means that there'll be insufficient staff. That means mandatory overtime. That means less quality care for the detainees while they're in there. So that's just one example of something that we wanted to bring to the county's attention, both to the people and in hearings before the county board. Transparency in that sense we thought was also missing. So that's basically why we exist. But I should close my part here by saying how we're different from the Community Oversight Board of the Police Department, about which you just heard. And the answer lies just in the title. They have oversight. Their oversight is based on a state law and a county ordinance. If they want information, they can ask for it. If they don't get it, they can subpoena it. If they make a recommendation for discipline and the police chief doesn't agree, he has to explain publicly and to the county board why he doesn't take the recommendation. And of course, they have the benefit of the superbly experienced independent police auditor from whom you just heard. So they have all that. We have none of that. We have no legal authority to do anything. We exist as a collaborative effort with the sheriff. And I must say the collaboration has been very good so far. We have a good relationship with them, but we have to recognize that this is an ongoing thing. We're kind of inventing it from nothing. We could not find a model for this kind of organization except from Alexandria, which is a little different. There are 123 sheriffs in Virginia. I may have missed some, but we can't find other examples. And I was struck when the police auditor mentioned to you how she was comparing what's going on here in Arlington with the standard, quote unquote, for community oversight of police departments. We don't have a standard that we can draw on. So we're kind of inventing this from scratch. I think we're working in good faith with the sheriff, and he's working in good faith with us, and we've made a good start. But you have to realize, if you're setting your expectations for what this advisory group will do, that it has a different, role than the Community Oversight Board for the Police Department. Chuck, you want to introduce our members and go ahead.
You're on mute, Chuck, if you want to unmute. There you go.
Okay. Thanks, Peter. Thank you, Amy, and glad to be here tonight. My name is Chuck Haddon. I am chair of the Sheriff's Community Advisory Group, or CAG as we have come to be known. I am a longtime Arlington resident and retired attorney, a rarity in Arlington, I know. And I'll be telling you a little bit about the CAG. We currently have 8 members. In addition to Peter and me, we have a woman who works for the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and she leads a team there that, among other things, highlights effective justice diversion initiatives. So her presence on the CAG is quite welcome, and it's an area that she has been involved in terms of justice diversion prior to the existence of this committee. We also have a woman who works in the jail. She prepares inmates to re-enter life outside the facility. She previously was a deputy. Before that, she was a psychiatric nurse, and she's doing some remarkable work based on what we've heard, the reports of it, in helping these inmates get ready to leave the facility when their time there is finished. We have 2 former inmates who work with recently released inmates to help them adjust to life after release. One of them created the Arm in Arm organization, which is devoted to doing that. And another works for an already existing organization that does the same kind of thing. And their presence gives the rest of the CAG additional comfort that we're getting this straight scoop from the people who are talking to us. They know what it was like to be there. They know what the issues were, and they don't hesitate to talk about their experience inside as well as their experience outside. So that those are really important members from our standpoint. We have a woman who works with teens as a bilingual assistant, facility manager at the Arlington Mill Community Center. So we're trying to get different age groups involved in this. And we just added a new member, a woman who is a public health physician and a physician consultant to the Virginia Department of Health. So that, along with Peter and me, comprises the citizen components of it. The sheriff is there for all of the meetings, and he brings in various people to talk to us at our request. Some of them are people that we've asked to speak with. Some are people that he suggested we hear from. And our experience so far has been mostly in training, listening to what's going on and trying to learn from that, learning about the detention facility and the things that are involved with it. We've met with several people. One of the command officers, a major, gave us a tour of the jail and explained the process for classifying the people who are detained there. They don't just throw everybody in together. There are different floors that have different levels of severity of crimes, and based on their assessment, whether they think the people are going to be dangerous or not. So that was an interesting process that he described to us, and it's much more complicated than I just mentioned. I don't have time to go into the whole thing. We met with a magistrate who is situated right in the detention facility, and we learned how she partakes in this legal process and the whole system and how it works and how people are brought before her for their pleas. We heard from the Commonwealth Attorney and from the public defender to get a better feel for their roles in the process. And they both seem to have a lot of respect for what's being done in the jail and appreciate what's been happening there. We heard from the head of the Behavioral Healthcare Division of DHS regarding forensic healthcare. We also heard in a similar way from a counselor at the jail. She's an employee who works in the jail regarding intake, assessment, and discharge processes. We twice have met with the new medical director, and this is probably the most interesting and exciting part of what we've been doing, is being involved in hearing what has happened here and what is going to happen, and making some comments and suggestions about things. But the sheriff was committed to replacing the for-profit medical provider with an in-house medical director and medical staff. And just this month, in November, and you may have read about this, the in-house medical program replaced the for-profit medical provider. And this last point is really very important, and it's been important to the sheriff. It's been important to all of us on the committee. We have read studies that show in-house medical programs correlate with decreased deaths in detention facilities. So moving from the for-profit provider to this new system has the potential for improving the quality of life and the existence of life as well for those who are inmates in the facility. And the gentleman who is the medical director, he came from the armed forces. He was high up in providing medical services there, and he's really attacked this new system in a very eager, enthusiastic way. He's made some changes, just even how they're physically located, but he appears to be on the right track, and he's striving to get accreditation for the program. Apparently there is a system that accredits these the for-profit group had not achieved that. I don't know if they were trying for it or not, but they hadn't achieved it. And this is a goal of his to get that. It's a goal of the sheriffs to get that. And it's a goal of the committees to have them get that. The last thing I want to talk about, and Peter touched on this, is that Peter and I spoke on behalf of the CAG, not in our individual capacities, but as CAG members at a county board meeting in support of the higher pay for sheriff's deputies. As you just heard, the low salaries have made it very hard to fill vacancies. The $23,000 gap between the sheriff's deputies and the police, starting police officers, results in people who are in this field opting for the most part for the higher paying salaries. And the result of this lack of ability to fill the vacancies has been that they have mandatory overtime for the current deputies. This does a couple things. Number one, it puts a big strain on the deputies themselves, both physically and mentally, emotionally as well. And two, it still results in insufficient staffing, which means that they have to go to a lockdown situation where the inmates are in their cells and not allowed out into the common areas that they otherwise would have been able to access had there been a full contingent of deputies on duty at that point. This isn't a constant thing, but it's a frequent thing. And the result of it is we've been told that there are confrontations. You've got a staff that's worn thin. You've got inmates who are unhappy about being locked down, and it results in more confrontations with yelling, screaming, throwing feces and urine at deputies. A bad situation from everybody's standpoint. So we were very willing to go out and support in front of the county board a request for starting salaries to be for the deputies to be closer to that of the police department, if not to match them. As Peter said, there's a $23,000 difference, which is 34% more for police than for sheriff's deputies. It makes it hard to recruit and hard to retain deputies. Deputies frequently, because of the lower pay, don't live in Arlington. They commute a long way. There's some that have been commuting an hour and a half, 2 hours from their home. So when you layer that in with a low-paying job, it just makes it really difficult. And as Peter mentioned, the jail is the largest mental health, drug addiction, and homeless facility in the county. And we'd like to see the deputies who are charged with running that place in large part under the sheriff's guidance. We'd like to see them be well compensated for that important kind of work.
Thank you. It sounds like you guys have done a lot to support the deputies, the sheriff's office, better medical care in the facility, and a lot of dedication and volunteer work on your behalf. I don't see any questions in the chat. I think it's working. But I know that people that registered for this do want to know how to follow the community advisory group, how to get information about it, and how to become more involved or contact the community advisory group to ask about issues. If you could tell us what the plan is for having contact from the community, we would appreciate it.
Well, we don't have a website. We're a much more informal group than that. I'm not sure that I know the answer to this question. Peter, do you have a thought on what people could do?
I should first note, we don't have a website. and no support from the county because we're not officially a county
Right.
entity. So you can't find us on the county website. I would say for members of the chapter, and I'm sorry to put this extra burden on you, Amy, without having cleared it in advance, but go through Amy to contact us at the moment, and we will get back to you.
Sounds good.
We will be discussing that in the next couple of meetings, is if there's some formal way, even though we're not a county entity, that we can, make ourselves more available to the public. But certainly for chapter members, I think going through the Legal Redress Committee, or if there is a Criminal Justice Committee, through it can reach us. I'm still a member of the chapter as well, so I will get the message from Amy.
We do have a meeting tomorrow night, so I will raise this. I'll put this on the agenda for tomorrow night to ask about the best way people can contact us, and we'll kick that around and try to get back to you with an answer.
Thank you. And we look forward to seeing the future work that you all are doing, and appreciate all the training everyone has done and the dedication to forming this group. I don't see any other questions in the chat. So I think I'm going to respect everyone's time. It's 8:30, and I'm going to send this back over to President Davis. Thank you so much for talking with us, and look forward to hearing from you again in the future.
Okay.
Thank you.
I echo with Amy tonight and say thank you so very much. And we also thank Amy and her committee for all of the work that is being done to make sure that our community stays informed as well. We are going to prepare to dismiss in just a moment, but I do want to take a moment. We have two things that we want to share. Our fellowship is in the chat, the holiday fellowship information. And also we have EJ Scott here with us from the Virginia State Conference. And so we welcome her to just share with us briefly.
Hi. Thank you for allowing me to come on and talk about this holiday program that we have. I was very interested in hearing what you guys are doing here. Sounds like you're getting a lot of good information and doing good work. So, I am EJ Scott. I am the chair of the Economic Justice Committee for the Virginia State Conference. And something that we are working on to do right now is on the 23rd of November, we're having a webinar. This is a virtual marketplace. It is called Jingle Black Business All the Way. We're encouraging people to join us on the 23rd, hear about some of the people who have, I call them curators. They have curated lists of Black businesses. And you can go to their websites and find those businesses. And so we're going to have them come on, ask them to highlight a few of a couple of their businesses, and then we'll supply all the links to you for to contact them. So on Friday, the Friday after Thanksgiving, we're calling it Buy Black Friday. Say, we're asking you to go and purchase from those businesses. Most of them will be offering a discount, and will provide you with the discount code so that you can buy whatever you want. There's great things like wrapping paper that has Black people on it, dolls, clothing, shoes, all kind of things, of course, including candles and kitchenware and things like that as well. But we hope that you will join us on the 23rd, and I will put the link in the chat so that you're able to take a look at it. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for sharing that with us tonight. We do encourage everyone to make sure that you read all of the emails that are coming from the branch, as there is information that's being shared about our Arlington County and the form of government that we have presently and what's going to happen in Arlington County soon in terms of our board meetings and places that you can speak up. We also want you to read so that you know what's happening for the Virginia State Conference and for the National NAACP, who is also doing many things that pertain to Arlington and especially the educational system here in Arlington and throughout Northern Virginia. So please read your emails. Please stay engaged. If you're willing to serve on any committee, please reach out to us. And after every meeting, we do stay online. If you want to take a moment to chat or ask any question, we welcome that. Thank you again for being here tonight. Thank you for your service to our community. Thank you, because all of us together are making Arlington County a better place. And so I'm going to leave you with a prayer my grandmother used to say, and many of our ancestors, friends, and family say, "May the Lord watch between me and thee while we're absent one from another." Amen. Have a great evening, and I look forward to seeing you in person on December 15th.
Good night, everyone.